Hi there, it's DRT Noober from Viva La Dirt League here, bringing you episode 2 of Old School Game Sessions. And this particular episode we'll be looking at Ultima Underworld, which is one of my top 10 games of all time, and it was a huge part of my childhood. Okay, Ultima Underworld was developed back in 1992 by a company called Blue Sky Productions, but more, you might be more familiar with the name Origin, who were the company who published it, and also developed the rest of the Ultima series, which was huge in my childhood. Probably the most important series of games in my childhood, I'd say. So Ultima Underworld, as you can see, it sort of broke new ground. It was the first time a sort of first-person role-playing game was developed. And it actually inspired a whole series of other games that came in the future. For example, the Elder Scrolls series was inspired by this game. I know Valve had been inspired by this game, and that was part of the influence behind the Half-Life series. So the plot is a little bit different. The game sits, if you're familiar with the Ultima series, the plot sits somewhere in between the end of Ultima 6, The False Prophet, and Ultima 7, The Black Gate. So it's in between that time. The Avatar kind of gets rudely taken away from his time on Earth, and he ends up in Britannia, where he gets wrongly accused of kidnapping the Baron's daughter, or doing something nasty with her. So he gets placed, because this is set on the Isle of the Avatar, and he gets thrown into the Stygian, I think it's called Stygian Abyss, which is this horrible, massive dungeon where there is no escape. Oh, you might just notice there, I've just swallowed a psychedelic mushroom, which is a little feature of the game. Makes all the walls look funny. Brilliant. So you get put in this dungeon, and the story sort of goes around figuring out what's happened here, because this dungeon, the Stygian Abyss, used to be this utopian society where all these different races came together, like goblins and trolls, and there were knights and there were mages who were human, and everyone sort of lived together in harmony. And there was this champion called Sir Cabarrus who sort of headed this whole thing, and when he died, the whole thing fell apart, and so you were entering this underworld, this civilization which has sort of fallen apart, and everyone's corrupt and everyone's angry, and it's such a fascinating world to enter. So the story, I'm not going to reveal too much about it, but it's sort of about figuring out what happened to this place, and why, and who kidnapped the Baron's daughter. Your goal is ultimately to find the Baron's daughter. Okay, so obviously it was first person, and it was the first game to do this other than those old school RPG maze games. You could look up and down for the first time in any 3D game, which is brilliant. It had really interesting character development, whereas you didn't level up as such, but in the game you gained experience points. You did actually gain levels as well, and you gained experience points, but they didn't turn into anything until you went to a shrine, and at that shrine you would enter a mantra, and the mantras, depending what mantra you entered, you would gain a skill, maybe in swordsmanship or repairing or blacksmithing or whatever. And the great thing about it was all of these mantras were hidden around the game world in little notes. So it made it really interesting sort of developing your character, because you had to find the right mantra to get the right skill. So this was actually my first Ultima game, because I couldn't get Ultima 7 Black Gate to work for quite a while when I was a young boy. But that was the second. I loved this game because there's 8 levels to the Stygian Abyss, and each level has its own civilization, or there are its own thing about it. So on this first level here, we're not going to see it in this episode because it's too short, but there is a group of human beings who've obviously recently been imprisoned called the Outcasts. And on the second level, the whole level is really beautifully created and structured, and that's inhabited by the Mountain Men, who are a race of sort of small humanoids who can work with stone and metal really well. And the third level, you find lizardmen. On the fourth level, you find 2 opposing tribes. There's trolls, and then there's the Knights of the Crux, and they sort of hate each other, and there's a tension between them. It's really interesting. And every single level has its own unique thing about it. So there was really interesting things about the game. There was a bug in the game where there were these scrolls you could pick up, like a scroll of Fireball, for example. And if you used it, it was a one-time item. You could cast Fireball without using any mana, and it would just fire Fireball. If you cast Fireball on a scroll, it would turn into a debris, which is just a bit of ash. But you could use that debris to then cast unlimited Fireballs for the rest of the game. So it was this crazy bug, but it was so awesome. The second time I went and played through, It was brilliant. I just created all these debris of different spells, and I could just destroy anything easily. Just a bit of combat there. The other thing is that you might notice that when we're playing this game, everything's really bright and light, and when you played it as a kid, you might not have noticed that. There's this file called shades.dat in the game folder, and if you delete it, all the shadows go away, and you can actually see what's going on. So that's what I've done here, because that's what I did when I played it through. So there we go. This is combat. As you fight things, you see there's a little goblin at the top of the gargoyle at the top of the screen. His eyes glow green, then yellow, then red as you hurt your opponent. So that's sort of a great little mechanic there. And that is all the time we have today for Old School Game Sessions. I'll be bringing you episode 3 really soon with my brand new microphone. Look forward to it. See you then.